Welcome to a special broadcast. I'm Anthony Martinez. Rudy Giuliani was born in 1944 in Brooklyn, New York. In 1983, President Ronald Reagan appointed Rudy Giuliani as the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. In 1993, Rudy Giuliani was elected mayor of the city of New York. Under Mayor Giuliani's leadership, overall crime was cut by 56%, murder was cut by 66%, and New York City, once considered the crime capital of the country, became recognized by the FBI as the safest large city in America. On September 11, 2001, Mayor Giuliani immediately began leading the recovery of the city as it faced its darkest hour. He was named Person of the Year by Time magazine, knighted by the Queen of England, and dubbed Rudy the Rock by the French president, and former First Lady Nancy Reagan presented him with the Ronald Reagan Presidential Freedom Award. Mayor Giuliani recently ran for the Republican nomination for President of the United States. During his campaign, he galvanized the national debate on such critical issues as national security, education, energy independence, and healthcare, and the economy. And it is my honor now to welcome New York City Mayor Rudy Giuliani.
Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Let me begin by first saying thank you for everything that you did for this country and for New York City.
Thank you very much.
What was the most important lesson that you learned and that you think the nation learned on 9/11?
Well, I think the most important lesson that we learned is that you have to be prepared for the kinds of things that can happen in this world. That you have to have an understanding of terrorism, particularly Islamic extremism, and what its motives are, what it's trying to do, because it's been going on since the 60s and 70s, and we probably didn't pay enough attention to it, and probably didn't respond to it in the right way as it developed. And then you have to be prepared both to try to stop it, and then you have to be prepared for, if you don't stop it, how you respond to it, so you save as many lives as possible. I think in New York we were probably better prepared than any place in the country, largely because we have so many emergencies in New York. So our emergency services people are the most experienced. At the same time, the dimension of it was so great that no matter how well prepared you were, it was still a terrible catastrophe. And you could just minimize it. You couldn't really eliminate all the terrible things that happened.
Are we today prepared? Are we doing enough to prevent another attack, or is there something else that we need to do, in your opinion, that the President needs to do, that the Secretary of Homeland Security needs to do?
Well, the answer is yes and no. Yes, we are better prepared than we were back in 2001. We're much better prepared and doing a much better job of making airlines safe. We have better intelligence apparatus than we had then. We have much more sharing of information with countries all over the world that are much more sensitive to gathering information about possible Islamic extremist attacks. You've got other countries that are under threat, like we see now in Germany. I happen to have been in England in 2005 when the attacks took place there, the 4 attacks on was July 7 of 2005. And so we are better prepared, but we aren't as prepared as we should be. We have big gaps. Our port security isn't what it should be. We've paid a lot of attention to airports. We haven't paid as much attention to our port, our mails, the possibility of chemical, biological attack, possibility of small nuclear attack, dirty bombs. We think about a big nuclear attack because of the Cold War, but we don't think about the kind of nuclear attack that's more likely, which is somebody bringing nuclear material in and basically detonating it in the middle of a crowded part of America. I think that the Department of Homeland Security has done a lot to try to make us safer, and then they've had some big areas in which they haven't. I thought one of the purposes of the Department of Homeland Security would be to take every major area of America and get it ready for a certain level of preparation for an attack. And instead what we have is serious differences between different cities or states that you're in. Some are very well prepared, some are prepared, some are not prepared at all. And the Department of Homeland Security really should be monitoring that so that everybody is at a certain level of preparation. I thought they would have done a better job with border security than they did. So those are areas in which we really have to improve.
Now, the Attorney General earlier in the administration announced the controversial move to decide to try the self-professed September 11th mastermind, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, in New York City. You were against it.
Yes.
And now the president decided to back off a bit, but he hasn't decided yet where to try the terrorist. Why is New York and a civilian court not the answer?
Well, I mean, for several reasons. First of all, I don't think a civilian court's the answer at all. But if it's going to be a civilian court, it certainly shouldn't be, 4 blocks away from where the attack took place. The people there have already been traumatized in ways that just have never happened before in America. Mm-hmm. They're already the subject of a lot of possibilities of attack. The mayor of New York, Mayor Bloomberg, originally supported the president's decision. And then when he looked at the expense of it, $400 million a year, he came out very strongly against it. He said, we can't afford $400 million a year to have this trial in New York. And the reality is, if you can't have it in New York, you can't have it anywhere else either, because the reason not to have it in New York is too dangerous to have it in New York. And it could be done in a military court. The administration has approved tribunals. There's no example I can think of a terrorist who's not an American citizen, who planned the attack from abroad, who in essence planned a military-type attack on us, that's really not been tried in a military court. So I don't know why the President and Attorney General Holder want to make this point. And if the idea is they want to show the world that we're fair, both the President and the Attorney General have announced that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is guilty, and if he gets acquitted, they're going to keep him in jail anyway. So this is a show trial more than it is a real trial from the way in which they're explaining it. And I also don't understand the indecision. The decision to do this goes back to last November. Here we are 1 year later, and the President and the Attorney General can't seem to decide where to try him. I believe that shows a great deal of confusion and weakness to the terrorists who tend to take advantage of us when we're weak, and they tend to back off when we act in a more decisive way. So I think they're making a terrible mistake. I think it was a terrible mistake to try him there. I think it's an even worse mistake to be scratching their heads about it, for almost a year now. I wrote a book about leadership.
Yes.
And one of the things about leadership that's most important, you have to be decisive. And this is just the antithesis of that. Okay. This is complete indecision.
Okay. And on that note, we're going to take a quick commercial break, much more with the mayor when we return.